My name is David Smith, and welcome to Correctional Officer Lifestyle. Hey folks, this is David Smith at Correctional Officer Lifestyle. This is going to be the last video for Emergency Preparedness. I have once again made up some notes. I'm going to kind of do it as a wrap-up style. You know, just go through what I've already been talking about. I'm going to wrap it up kind of different order than I did the videos in. So, starting off simple. What is an emergency? And what is an incident? While you're on the job, what is an emergency? And what is an incident? In Florida, we have a procedure that is the Emergency Action Center procedure. The Emergency Action Center is a statewide notification center, the Emergency Action Center, where we call with all of our reportable emergencies, and they are all listed in that policy with the time frames that they have to be reported in. And what that does is, depending on the severity of the incident, that gets help. That gets help to us. So, without delay, and it gets us help from outside the institution. And there is two categories: severe and serious. And I classify just about anything that I have to report to the Emergency Action Center as an emergency. Is specifically the severe emergencies. Most other things is an incident. Okay, if you're in law enforcement, you know what an incident report is. If I have to file an incident report, but I don't have to notify the Emergency Action Center, I tend to not treat that as an emergency. If I have to submit an incident report and notify the Emergency Action Center, that is something I would consider an emergency. A lot of the staff that I work for or work with don't have access to that policy, or don't know that policy as well as I do as a supervisor, and they have to make a good, sound correctional judgment in the heat of what's going on. And they make the best judgment that they can, depending on their level of training, their level of experience, and their level of knowledge of the policies and procedures. And like I mentioned in the first video, I'm sorry folks, it's been a rough day. As I mentioned in the first video, I would rather a rookie officer enact the emergency plan to get help during a non-emergency than to not feel comfortable enough to activate the emergency system in place for an actual emergency. I'd rather an overreaction than an underreaction every day. Okay, but like I also mentioned, that officer's going to learn. He's going to grow. He's going to become more familiar with the policies and procedures. He's going to become more familiar with the way things are done where he works. And he is going to develop into an officer that better understands the difference between an incident and an emergency. Like I mentioned in the second video, there's no possible way No possible way that every eventuality that can result in an emergency or that can result from an emergency can be covered by policy. You have to make good judgment. And that's where the veteran staff comes into this, teaching the younger staff how to make that judgment call, how to do that. In the third video that I did in the series, I defined what I consider to be a family emergency. But I urged everybody to get with their family and clearly define what is a family emergency. What is an emergency within the family? Something that you have to stay home from work to deal with. What is an emergency? Now, you're not going to, just like at work, you're not going to have a comprehensive list of every single thing that can possibly be an emergency situation. But if you just expound on what severity you're looking for when it comes to emergency, I think the family and the correctional officer being on the same page, or at least in the same book, would help greatly. Okay? Do not call in sick all the time talking about I have a family emergency when you don't actually have a family emergency. Okay? That's just like calling in sick when you're not sick, or calling in family sick when a member of your family is not sick. You call in with a family emergency when you don't have a family emergency. That's not cool. That's not cool. And we notice things like that in the leadership ranks of the institution. When you have an emergency situation at the prison, your presence, your involvement, your actions, everything revolves around you being at work during the emergency. We need you there. We absolutely need you there during the emergency. Okay? Now, as a correctional officer, you are law enforcement. You are a first responder. So remember, emergency situations can happen anywhere. They can happen on the road on your way to work. They can happen in a store while you're purchasing items to take to work. Emergency situations can happen anywhere. You, as a member of the Department of Corrections, whatever department you're with, have better training and more knowledge about emergency handling emergencies than does the average Joe on the street. And if any of my officers call me and tell me I'm going to be late because I'm helping somebody that was just involved in an automobile accident, I'm going to be late because I am assisting somebody that had a medical emergency in the store that I'm buying my lunch at, I am not going to say anything negative to that officer. I'm going to support them 100%. I'm going to ask if I need to send somebody down there to help them help the people that they're helping. I'm going to ask them if EMS has been activated. I'm going to ask them if local law enforcement is en route. I'm going to ask them all sorts of questions to help them deal with that emergency situation that they're dealing with on their way to work. Because you are a first responder. If you see something, you have a duty to respond to that incident or that emergency. Folks, that's all I got for emergency preparedness. Remember to be prepared at all times for emergency situations. During an emergency situation, I say this all the time at the end of my videos, but during an emergency situation, the absolute worst thing that you can do is nothing. Do something. Use your training. Use your knowledge. Get in there and help. Do something. Folks, this is David Smith, the Correctional Officer Lifestyle. Love shouldn't hurt. There is no place for domestic violence in this world. If you're in an abusive relationship, please find your way out of it. If you know somebody in an abusive relationship, help them find a way out of it. There's help. There's help for you. If you know the abuser in an abusive relationship, say something to somebody. Worst thing you can do is nothing. And if you are the abuser in an abusive relationship, there's help for you too. All you gotta do is admit you need it and ask for it. I am my brother's keeper. I am my sister's keeper. Y'all stay safe behind the fence. It's David Smith, Correctional Officer Lifestyle.